जी प्लीज स्टार्ट करें।
Yes, madam. Assalamu alaikum. Today my topic is non-probability sampling. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. All the things you have in life are temporary. Only your good work is permanent. Do a lot of good works to make Jannah your permanent address. Learning outlines. Introduction, definition, types of non-probability sampling, sampling error, advantages and disadvantages of non-probability sampling. Learning outcomes of today's presentation is by the end of this presentation, participant will be able to describe the non-probability sampling and various types of non-probability sampling. Sampling. The process of selecting a number of individuals for a study in such a way that the individual represents the larger group from which they were selected. Sample. It is a unit that is selected from the population. It represents the whole population and its purpose is to draw the inference. Sampling frame is the list of population from which the sample is chosen. There is some terminologies universe. It is a specified group of the persons, objects, measurements or values. Population. It is the study group of the persons and objects in which the specific measurements or values are obtained. The population may be study population, target population, reference population. In sampling, there is also the study unit. Every unit involved in the study or individual is called the study unit. It may be person, household, family, school, patients with a particular disease. A study subjects is a full description of the subjects or sample or participants involved in the research. It may include their demographic information, socioeconomic characteristics, and health profile. Population, mainly their target population, which is the entire group of people or objects to which the researcher wishes to generalize the study finding. It is also known as theoretical population. Study population, which is also known as the accessible population, is the actual sampling frame from which we randomly drew our sample. It is actually study population is the subset of the target population because target population is the entire group of population and from the target population we draw our accessible population which is the study population. It is actual sampling frame. In this, there is the whole target population. From the target population, we draw the study population, which is also accessible population, and from study population, we select our sample. There is various steps in the selection of sample. First of all, we define our target population. Select the sampling frame, which is the list of the individuals. Then determine whether we apply probability or non-probability or sampling method. After planning, we further select the sampling unit, then determine the sample size, select actual sampling unit, and then conduct the field work. Purpose of sampling. The main purpose of sampling is that the large population can be conveniently covered, time, money, and energy is saved, and it is helpful when units of area are homogeneous, used when percent accuracy is not required, and used when the data is unlimited. Now come towards the types of sampling. Sampling is basically two types, probability sampling and non-probability sampling. A probability sampling is one in which each member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. It is in this chance it is known population the particular member of the population being chosen is known and there is non-zero probability for every element to be included in the sampling unit. It is also known as random sampling because every individual has equal chance of being selected. Whereas other type of sampling is non-probability sampling, which is known as non-random sampling. In this, a particular member of the population being chosen is unknown in the sample. In probability sampling, a randomness is the element of control, whereas in non-probability sampling, as it is non-random sampling, it totally relies or depends on the personal judgment. Therefore, it is the non-random sampling. And the probability sampling is non-random sampling because equal chance, and we know the every element included in the study. Whereas in non-probability sampling, the particular member of population being chosen is unknown. Classification of sampling technique. As I already told, non-probability sampling, probability sampling technique. Probability sampling in the previous lecture we have discussed. It may be simple random sampling, systematic, stratified, clusters, and other sampling technique. And today our topic is non-probability sampling technique. It includes the convenience sampling, judgmental sampling, quota sampling, snowball sampling. As we discussed in previous lectures, the various types of probability sampling, it includes the simple random sampling. In these, all elements have considered equal chance and equal chance of being selected. In systematic random sampling, every nth element chosen started at random and picked every nth element in succession. In cluster sampling, population is divided into the clusters and then randomly take the samples from these clusters either to simple random sampling or systematic. In stratified, population is divided into subpopulation stratum, and from these stratum subjects selected randomly through simple random sampling or other systematic random sampling. It is all about probability sampling, which we have discussed in previous lecture. Today our topic is non-probability sampling and its type. First type is purposive sampling. In this sampling method, the researcher selects a typical group of individuals who might represent the larger population and then collects data from this group. It is also known as judgmental sampling. And in this, the researcher selects a typical group of individuals who might represent the larger population, and it is totally based on the researcher knowledge and judgment. Advantage of purposive sampling is it is based on the person's experience, person judgment. Disadvantage, it cannot measure the representativeness of the sample. Another type is convenience sampling. Convenience sampling, as the name indicates, that it refers to the procedures of obtaining units or sampling units of members who are most conveniently available. It consists of units which are obtained because cases are readily available or conveniently available. It is also known as accidental or haphazard sampling. In selecting the incidental sample, the researcher determines the required sample size and then simply collects data on that number of individuals who are available easily. This type of sampling is useful for pilot testing. Convenience sampling advantage, a sample selected for convenience sampling is accessibility and immediately known population and group and good response rate. Disadvantage, its main disadvantage is we cannot generalize the finding, and we don't know what population group the sample is representative of. So we cannot move beyond describing the sample. There is also problems of reliability, and the respondent represent the target population. Results are not generalizable, and we use the result that are easy to get. Another type of sampling is the quota sampling. In this sampling, the selection of the sample is made by the researcher who decides the quota for selecting sample from specified subgroups of the population. For example, an interviewer might be needed data for 40 adults and 20 adults in order to study student television viewing habits. In this, we develop the quota. For example, selection will be based on 20 adult male and 20 adult women, 10 adolescent girls and 10 adolescent boys. Because we already decide the quota for selecting the sample from specified subgroups which may be on the basis of gender or any other characteristics. We define the quota. Advantage mean it contains the specific subgroups in the proportions desired. It may reduce the bias, easy to manage and quick. The main disadvantages are they depend on subjective decisions, not possible to generalize, only reflects population in terms of quota, possibility of bias in selection, no standard error. Another type of non-probability sampling is snowball sampling. In this, the researcher identify and select available respondents who meet the criteria for inclusion. After the data have been collected from the subjects, the researcher asks for referral of other individuals who would also meet the criteria and presents the population of concern. It is also known as chain sampling, chain referral sampling, or sampling referral sampling. Because first of all, researcher initially recruit the initial subjects of interest. Then initial subjects recruit additional subjects, and additional subjects further recruit the additional subject. In this form, it known that is why it is called a snowball sampling. Snowball sampling advantages: it identifies a small, hard to reach, uniquely defined target population. It is useful in the qualitative research. Access to difficult to reach the population. Main disadvantage bias can be present, limited generalizability, non-representativeness of the population, and will result in biased sample as it is self-selecting sample. Now various errors which is associated with sampling. There may be random sampling error. Random error is the sample. Random error is actually the sample selected is not representative of population due to chance. The level of it is controlled by sample size, and a larger sample size leads to smaller sampling error. It means if we increase the sample size, then the sampling error becomes small. Another non-sampling error may be systematic error. The level of it is not controlled by increasing the sample size, and the basic type of non-sampling error may be non-response error. It occurs when the units selected as a part of sampling procedures do not respond in whole or in part. A response or data error, which may be any systematic bias that occurs during data collection, analysis, or interpretation, like respondent errors, lying forgetting, interviewer bias, recording errors, poorly designed questionnaires, and the basic type of non-sampling error is non-response error occurs when the units selected as a part of sampling procedures do not respond in whole or in part. Now we see some difference in sampling in quantitative and qualitative research. In quantitative research, the researchers worry about know about something want to know about causes of something, and the researchers spend a lot of time wondering how to measure things in quantitative research, and how small patterns generalizable to big patterns, and to make sure others can repeat and others can repeat my finding or similar findings are repeatable. It is all about the thinking of the quantitative researchers, and assumption of in the quantitative research, the assumption of quantitative sampling is the researchers want to generalize our finding to the population. Random events are predictable, and researchers compare the random events to over results, and probability sampling is the best approach in the quantitative sampling. Whereas in qualitative research, The researchers want to see the world through the eyes of their respondents. We want to describe the context in a lot of detail. We want to show how social change occurs. Researchers is interested in things, how things can come to be controlled, and it want to reflex or research approach to be flexible and able to change in qualitative research. Therefore, the assumption of sampling in qualitative research is that social actors are not predictable like objects. Randomized events are irrelevant to social life. Probability sampling is expensive and inefficient in the qualitative research. Therefore, the main sampling technique in the qualitative research is non-probability sampling, and it is the best approach in the qualitative sampling. Therefore, the types of sampling in quantitative research is basically the two types, probability sampling and non-probability sampling, which we have discussed. Therefore, in qualitative researchers seek saturation. How many is not the issue. Understanding the phenomena, have you learned enough? Where numbers are irrelevant in qualitative research, and the researchers are interested in deep understanding of the themes. Whereas in quantitative research, the quantitative researcher seeks the statistical validity in the sample. And researchers in quantitative research, researchers are basically concerned in generalizability of the sample to the target population and systematically excluded anyone. Now, comparison between the probability and non-probability sampling. Requirement of resources in probability sampling. More resources are required in terms of time, cost, and efforts. In non-probability sampling, less resources are required. Selection of samples in probability sampling. There is random selection and non-subjective judgment of researcher is involved. Whereas in non-probability sampling, it is a non-random sampling and there is subjective judgment of researcher is involved. Quality of inference drawn from probability sampling. The inference which is drawn from the sample is generalizable to the population, whereas in non-probability sampling, the results are not generalizable to the population. Best suited for researcher, probability sampling is able to understand the population, whereas in non-probability sampling is best suited for researcher to understand or develop a concept or idea. Applicable to the kind of population, probability sampling is applicable to the elements which are finite in number, with precisely defined and specific category, whereas in non-probability sampling elements are infinite, too general category and not precisely defined. Chances of errors and biases. In the probability sampling, sampling errors and systematic biases are less likely to occur, whereas in non-probability sampling, it prone to encounter with systematic error and sampling biases. The types of probability sampling is simple random sampling, systematic random sampling, stratified random sampling, cluster sampling, multi-stage sampling. Whereas in non-probability sampling, it may be volunteer sampling, convenient purposive sampling, quota sampling, snowball sampling, matched sampling, and genealogy-based sampling. Now it is time for MCQs. First MCQs. A sampling error is a statistical error that occurs when an analyst does not select a sample that represents the entire population of data. By increasing the sample size, has following effect on the sampling error. It increases the sampling error, it reduces the sampling
Okay.
it has no effect, or it may reduce or has no effect on the sampling error. The correct answer is B. As I already told, when we increase the sample size, then there is reduction in the sampling error. MCQs 2. In non-random sampling, the probability of selecting an item from the population is unknown, known, known 0, 1 or 0.
Noun.
Alpha. In random sampling, the probability of in probability sampling or random sampling, the probability of selecting an item from the population is known. But in non-random sampling, the probability of selecting an item from the population is unknown. Mr. Asim conducts a research and choose for his sample whoever walks by in the mall. That is an example of which of the following sampling type? Quota
Convenient.
sampling. Yes, simple. And yes, correct answer is D, convenience sampling. Because as the Mr. Asim conduct the research and choose the sample whoever available or conveniently available in the mall, therefore this sampling type will be convenience sampling. Simple random is non probability sampling, stratified is also probability sampling. So three left: quota, convenience, and cluster, and the answer is most likely to go towards the convenience sampling. MCQs 4. In which of the following types of sampling the information is carried out under the opinion of an expert? Quota sampling, convenience sampling, snowball sampling, and judgmental sampling.
D.
No, correct answer is D. Because in judgmental sampling, the chosen of the sample is based on totally based on the researcher knowledge and experience, and therefore the sampling information which is collected from the sample is carried out under the opinion of the expert or researcher, and it is the judgmental sampling. What is the least expensive and least time consuming of all sampling techniques? Quota sampling, stratified sampling, simple random convenience sampling, or cluster sampling?
Convenience.
Yes, correct answer is convenience sampling because the main advantage of convenience easy to conduct, least expensive and least time consuming because we target the population which is easily available. Whereas in simple random sampling, we first of all we define the sampling frame, then conduct the methods of collecting the sample which may be loaded to your computer generated number. In stratified sampling, random sampling, we first of all we develop the stratas, and then from the stratas we take the sample through simple random sampling, and in quota sampling we also define the quota. Therefore the least expensive and least time consuming of all these types is convenience sampling. Below is the list of population and samples. Select the population which is most likely to be representative rather than biased of the population from which it is drawn. Means there is a population and then it presents the sample. Correctly identify the population and sample which represent the representativeness rather than biasness of the population. A is population is adult from single geographical area and sample is employed at a local factor. B population is online shoppers and the sample is list of individuals who have web-based email. C is the population owners of luxury car, sample is subscriber to what car magazine. D is the population owners of luxury car and sample is BMW owners. E population is the general population in an inner Lahore town and the sample is all patients registered at a local GP surgeries in the same area.
D.
D.
Correct answer is E because in this the population is general population which is the over the target population in a inner Lahore town, and in the sample it represents the all patient registered. It means it shows the sampling frame at a local GP surgeries in the same area. Therefore we see the registered patient and we get the sampling frame. We develop the sampling frame and this represent the random sampling, and you know the probability of random sampling is always present the representativeness, and its main advantage of the probability sampling is the representativeness of the sample. Therefore the correct answer in these option is E. MCQ 7. Mr. Ali conduct a research to find out about age groups of whether 21 to 30, 31 to 40 age groups, 41 to 50 age groups, three age categories prefer what brand of cigarettes in a particular city. This is an example of which type of following non probability sampling.
Quota sum.
Yes, it is represent a quota sampling because the
Okay.
researcher already defined the quota of age groups, which may include 21 to 30, grades 31 to 40, 41 to 50, and he's totally focused is on these type of these age groups to find out the brand of cigarettes in the particular city. It don't present the convenience sampling, and it is not present the snowball sampling, and not present the judgmental sampling. Therefore, if you see any question in which the researcher already describes the category of interest he wants to conduct a research, therefore, in non-probability sampling, it is always presents the quota sampling. MCQ number 8. Mr. Naveed conducted a research in order to find out a homeless individuals and then ask them to recruit more individuals they know who are homeless to be involved in the research. This is an example of which of the following non-random sampling type: quota sampling, convenience sampling, snowball sampling, or judgment.
Snowball.
Yes, it is the snowball sampling because Mr. Naveed conducted a search to find out homeless individuals, and then he further asked the primary respondent to further recruit the individuals who are homeless, and then chain increase until he reached the required sample size. Therefore, it is the snowball sampling, which is also known as chain sampling. Interviewing hockey players as they exit the arena is an example of what type of sampling: quota sampling, convenience sampling, snowball sampling, or judgment sampling. The correct answer is B because as the hockey player leave their area, we interview and already which players are available for our interview on the convenience basis. Therefore, it present a convenience sampling because it neither present the quota sampling, snowball sampling, or judgmental sampling. Because the sample is most conveniently available. Of the following sampling method, which is the probability sampling method: quota sampling, convenience sampling, snowball sampling, judgmental sampling, or simple random sampling.
E. Simple random sampling.
Yes, because all other
Simple
types
random.
represent the non-probability sampling, and only one is the probability sampling, which is simple random sampling. This is the keys of the MCQs, references, and thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Hansa. A very nice presentation. And there are many good things about your presentation, especially you have talked about the different types of non-probability sampling. And with examples, you have talked about the advantages and disadvantages and why we choose non-probability sampling and what is the importance of sampling frame. You have given good MCQs. most of the MCQs were scenario based, and I would like to see all of the MCQs should be scenario based, especially your MCQ number 10. It can easily be built in a scenario form. Uh, However, as we always say that there is always something that we can add, and we are looking forward for adding something. So your presentation was a very good presentation, and I have seen that you have covered all the things with the examples. However, I would like you to please add few recent advances in the sampling techniques, especially about the multi-stage sampling. How would you give the details about the multi-stage sampling, that is including both the probability sampling as well as non-probability sampling? Dr. Hansa, would you like to elaborate about the multi-stage sampling, including both the probability and non-probability sampling?
Um, yes, madam. Actually, the multi-stage sampling is the sampling method which divides the population in groups or clusters for conducting the research. It is a complex form of cluster sampling, and sometimes it is known as multi-stage cluster sampling. There are various methods to conduct multi-stage sampling. First of all, in the probability sampling, we choose a sampling frame which include the population of interest, and then researcher allocates a number to every group. In the step 2, select a sampling frame of relevant separate subgroup, which is related to different discrete groups selected in previous stages. And in step 3, we repeat the second step if necessary. And sometimes there may be step 4, which includes some variation of probability sampling and choose a member of sampling group from the subgroups. And it is mainly applied to the multi-stage design where the population is too vast and researching every individual is impossible. For
Thank
example,
you very much.
we can
Very nice.
apply it to the various colleges, researches, and various areas with national research to survey the employees of multinational company and government level research.
Okay, thank you very much. I was asking, is there more probability sampling or non-probability sampling that is associated with multi-stage sampling? So as we know that in probability sampling, when each sampling unit has an equal and known chance of being included in the study, then it is a probability sampling. However, when the sampling units do not have an equal chance to be included, then we call it non-probability sampling. The case with multi-stage sampling is that we prefer to have probability sampling while we are dealing with large samples, especially when we are using nation-wise data or the national data. So the importance of the multi-stage sampling is we can even have both the probability and non-probability sampling in the multi-stage sampling if we have at any stage the difficulty of choosing the sampling unit from our study population. So the stages of the sampling unit gives us the flexibility to have the other type of samplings to be included, not just the simple random sampling or the cluster random sampling. So the selection is done in stages until the final sampling unit, and the final sampling unit can be a household or a person, or if we are doing a survey, that any professional or healthcare worker can be our sampling unit. So till our sampling units are arrived, we have different stages. In the first stage, a list of large size sampling unit is prepared. These may be towns, villages, or schools. A sample of their our villages or towns or schools is further selected either through random sampling with probability of selection of proportional to the size. For each of the selected first stage units, a list of smaller sampling unit is prepared. For example, if the first stage units are towns, then the second stage unit may be houses or households. Then in the next stage, a sample of these units are then again are going to be further broken down to persons. For example, in each house, if there are further family members are present, there are males and females, there are children, there are old age people. So it is further we divide our sample to reach our the population that we really want to survey. However, sometimes it is not possible that we get the whole household to be included in our study, or we can include them randomly. For example, there may be some females who are observing Parda, or there are certain males who are having their work cars while we are doing our surveys, or there are old age people who are very sick and they cannot be included due to our random sampling. So we use non-probability sampling in this stage to include those units on the basis of their our purposive sampling, to include them in our multi-stage sampling. In purposive sampling, as we know that this method consists of selecting study units or persons or respondents on the basis of some predetermined idea or criteria. For example, if we want to have a study on a family planning, and we want to have those people, both male, female, who are present in the household, then our purposive sampling would include certain criteria in order to know that who is our respondent, and we will only allow our respondents of certain age groups to be included in our study. So this is how the multi-stage sampling that helps us in having little flexibility to have more than one type of sampling. Another important point about sampling is whenever we talk about advantages and disadvantages, we know in non-probability sampling, we have less cost. This is the greatest advantage. Thank you so much. You have already given a beautiful presentation about the less resources, or which means that there is a less cost that is involved. However, the multi-stage probability sampling, if it is very expensive. Second, whenever we talk about the non-probability sampling, we know that it is less time consuming and less skilled operators are required. While in probability sampling, we have more authentic, reliable information, and we have minimum bias that is present in that study. And we need repeated trainings of all the data collecting people and all those people who are involved in this research or survey. Another disadvantage of the non-probability sampling is that the results cannot be journalized. We know that there is a maximum bias and authenticity is debatable, and it is a weaker type of sampling. The most important point is about the generalizability. Uh, most of non-probability sampling techniques, they are being used in qualitative studies. So in qualitative studies, again, generalizability is a great issue. I think if you have any question here, you are most welcome to ask. We have covered all the important aspects of non-probability sampling. So the most important point that I want you to remember is that if the sampling frame is not available, or it is not possible to sample the study units in such a way that the probability for the different units to be selected in the sample is known, or if there is a large amount of money is required, or the cost is much more than your available resources, then you should prefer to go for non-probability sampling. In qualitative study designs, again, the non-probability sampling is the answer. We would stop here. If you have any question, you are most welcome to ask, please. Okay, thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.